Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. All right, so my fellow brand and website designer and graphic designer friends, this is for you. My question for you, are you feeling burnt out? Maybe like you cannot juggle all the plates in your hands. Maybe your clients are bothering you. You feel like you don't know what direction your business should go in and you're confused and all the things. There's so many feels. I could keep going. But if that's you right now, this episode's for you. I'm going to touch on some mindset tips, some super practical tips for working with clients, and even some like more marketing and that sort of stuff. Tips that will help you in not being drained or at least be less drained by your business right now because you're focusing on the right things and making some like subtle shifts here and there. So we're going to be really focusing on how to build a design business that will not drain you, but is still in demand and still doing well and all those things. But like, how can we have the both, right? That a business is doing well and it's not draining us. So I'm excited to chat with you about this. And I want to say before I go any further, if you're not a designer, but you work with clients in another way, I know most of you who listen to this podcast do a variety of kinds of work in your business. So if you're someone who's not a designer, but you work with clients in another way, like photographers, copywriters, social media managers, bookkeepers, all those sorts of jobs, listen up as well, because there's going to be plenty here for you to gain, as a lot of what I'm sharing relates simply to business that works with clients in some capacity. So these are very particular things that have helped me in my business literally right now, and also in past seasons where I had lots of client projects, deadlines, and endless logo drafts and all of that kind of stuff. So that is it. Let's dive in. All right, friends, thanks for taking me with you in your AirPods or playing in your house or your car or wherever you are. I so appreciate you tuning into this podcast. And before I go any further, I feel like I never asked this, but I would love to ask, if you're a podcast listener, which you are right now, but if you enjoy this podcast and get things from it, would you mind leaving a 5-star rating? You literally can just click the stars and then it submits it on Apple Podcasts. It's super easy and fast. Or you can write a review and I will sit there and read the review and absolutely love it. And we'll tell you thanks if I know that you sent it. But seriously, a huge part of helping podcasts grow is ratings and reviews. So I would so appreciate it if you took the time to do that. Haven't mentioned that in a while. Okay, so I want to dive into the tips though. So my first tip for building a design business that will not drain you is to keep your eyes set on your version of success. Now, this one might be both the most important and the most lame, perhaps. I don't know. But this is literally so huge for me in this season of business I'm in right now, and in like all the past seasons of my business. So I feel like I can talk a lot about it, but shiny object syndrome is everywhere. And when we're building our brand and website design businesses, we're likely learning from a lot of different voices and also likely following a lot of different voices, like other people that maybe design on the same platform as us, or maybe they're a friend we met at a conference, or they're in the same course that we're in, like whatever it is. You're following a lot of people. Again, podcasts, courses, YouTube tutorials, and we are often hearing everyone else's version of success, whether it's that they're sharing about some huge win in their business on Instagram, or you're listening to an expert on a podcast tell you how they built their business. So we get an idea from their story and we can think, oh, wait, should I be doing that too? Even if it's just a subconscious thing, we can think like that. So whether that be that it's like that they have a 6-figure-a-year business, or they sell courses now, or they're launching templates, or they only do VIP days, or they speak at tons of events and they're Instagram famous. They only work 5 hours a week, all these different things. But what I really want to challenge you in, and that will literally help you in whatever business you're in, not be drained, be happier, and enjoy your work more, is to look at what success looks like to you. Ask yourself, what does success look like for me in the season of life and business that I'm in right now? And that's a two-parter, right? So I like to think of it as, what does success look like to you? And then what does success look like in this current season? And if you're like, okay, what is this current season? I mean, you could go by like the actual seasonal calendar, which by the way, right now we are in fall. If you're listening to this live, mid-October, and seriously my favorite month ever. But what I mean by that is like, I like to define seasons, even just thinking like quarterly periods. So like, for example, when I think about my own life and business, success for me right now, as we enter quarter 4 of the year, is different than what success might look like in quarter 4 of 2023. It's completely different season. So what success look like for you, and what does success look like in this current season? And if you aim towards that, you'll be so much happier and better off. So for example, going back to like how we can hear so many people's different versions of success, but maybe you are a mom and your goal is that you're like, I would love to make an extra $3,000 a month, which, hey, that's a lot of money. That sounds really great, right? Maybe $3,000 after expenses and taxes, like that's what you get to take home every month. And you're doing one website design project a month to bring in that extra income for your family. And you are mostly working during nap time and when your child is at grandma's house one day a week. And that's kind of your setup. And that honestly sounds freaking amazing, but might look on the surface less Instagram worthy than if you were to be able to say, I have a 6-figure business, or I'm booked out 4 months straight, and I have a template shop where I make passive income. Like all that stuff is way more flashy than that scenario I laid out, but that scenario is amazing. And that might be exactly what you want and what your version of success is in your season of life. And I would just encourage you to lean into that, to lean into your version of success, whatever that is. And alternatively though, so I just laid out one version of success. Maybe your version is that you want to own an agency and you want a big team and you want to get your business to hundreds and thousands of dollars. Or maybe you are like, hey, my version of success is doing a template shop or courses or whatever it is. So just knowing your version of success, and to bring this home to like some more practical stuff, and also sharing a bit about where I've been in my business lately, just vulnerably, oh my gosh, what a tongue twister there, vulnerably with you guys. Lately, I've really been working on making sure I'm building a business that supports the lifestyle I want versus a business that looks like what I think it should look like. I feel like I've been working lately on not telling myself I should do this, I should want this, I should have this, but instead being like, wait, how do I want my business to support my life and my family? And it not being like a should this and should that. So I think about like, that means saying no to a lot of things, not doing all the things, putting my family first, being okay when I'm not able to work as much, and maybe and not getting to do all the things that I feel like I quote unquote need to or should do in my business, right? So in the land of like Instagram famous business owners and everyone sharing the behind the scenes, quote unquote, of their business on like reels and stories, I just really want to remind you that no business is perfect. And a business that's like running well and growing is certainly not perfect. And also what you see on like the front side of someone's business is often just marketing. There's so much more going on behind the scenes that people aren't necessarily sharing on Instagram, which is okay that they're not. But that's the truth of it, is so much of it is just marketing. And when you see someone who has some version of success where you're like, wait, should I do that? Should I pursue that? That's their version. They might not even be enjoying it, right? It could be that's their version of success, but maybe whatever you're doing actually sounds way more appealing to them. You never know. So if you don't want to be drained by your business, don't compare to other business owners. Don't chase someone else's version of success. And if you're thinking, Elizabeth, I can't help it, that sounds great. That sounds so nice, but let's talk more practical. I have 4 little quick practical tips here for like how to actually implement this mindset on a for real practical level. So first one, mute or unfollow accounts on Instagram or whatever social media you're using that are causing you to question your own version of success And what I want to say on that is like, you do not have to pay close attention to every competitor in your industry. You also don't have to pay close attention to every business friend. Like for example, just to bring it really close to home, in my course Book.Designer, we have an incredible community of designers who are doing Squarespace, WordPress, Wix, Showit, so many variety of things, and they are business friends with each other. But if like one of your business friends is distracting you from your version of success and making you feel like you should be doing that, should be doing what they're doing, it's okay to mute them and not watch every single thing they're doing constantly. It's okay to do that sort of thing. So I just want to normalize that for you, and maybe encourage you to pay attention to like, if you're on Instagram and you suddenly get that pit in your stomach that you're not doing enough and that what you're doing isn't working, ask yourself, what was it that caused that? Second thing, learn from educators and mentors who have similar values and similar versions of success as you. So I would say their version of success doesn't have to be the exact same as yours. You might not even be able to know if it's the exact same as yours anyway. But I have found that when you learn from people about business who also are doing life outside of work in a value system and with similar goals as what you have, and that makes sense to you, you're going to learn better business skills that you're going to be able to more easily apply to your life and your goals more. Hopefully that all makes sense. It makes sense in my brain as I'm saying it, but basically like following someone who has those similar goals about business stuff, right? You don't have to be following them for like what they ate for dinner, but that is still going to, the business stuff is going to apply to the life stuff. Okay, third thing, don't be on social media so much for consuming. If that is the place that drains you, like I was saying a minute ago, if you're looking at someone's feed and you got that pit in your stomach of I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough, my business isn't as good as hers, pay attention to what triggers that and do less of that. And it might be that you need like a week off of social media completely. Maybe it's just a weekend. But I know that is often like if we removed that, which I'm not saying we should, right? It's a great marketing tool, great for our businesses. But sometimes if we remove that, then all that imposter syndrome and all that we should and shouldn't do this gets removed. Okay. And then last little practical tip within this tip, ask yourself this question. Seriously, maybe this could be a journal prompt for you today if you want a little action step or something for you to think about as you go on a walk this afternoon or lift weights at the gym or unload the dishwasher. Here's my question. If in 6 months from now you were to send me, let's say you were to send me a DM on Instagram, I would love to hear from you, by the way. But if in 6 months from now you were to send me a message on Instagram and tell me, Elizabeth, that was the best 6 months of my business and life ever. Best 6 months of my business and life ever. What would have happened to have made that true? Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. different versions of that is like one of my favorite questions ever. I have a similar mindset like exercise inside of Book.Designer that's a similar question to that one. But yeah, ask yourself that question. I'm going to say it again. If in 6 months from now you were to like tell me or tell yourself, tell whoever, tell your spouse, tell your friend that was the best 6 months of business and life ever, what would have happened to make that true? Ask yourself that, journal about it, think about it. And yeah, that's my tip number 1. I talked about that a lot longer than I thought I would, but keep your eyes set on your version of success. Okay, this one's going to be a bit shorter than that one. So key number 2 to not being drained by your design business, set boundaries with your clients. So I've talked about this endlessly on this podcast. It's a big part of what I teach inside of Book.Designer. And I feel like I really like to beat this drum because we often ignore it. We sometimes think the rules don't apply to us, quote unquote, this time or with this client. And I know I have personally made client boundary mistakes in my own business. And when I have, it can make you resent your business. It can make you resent your client. And it leads to feeling drained by your business when you don't have to. And it's some really simple things you do on the front end of the project and then throughout the project that sets the tone, right? Because you're the person leading the project. You're not an employee in their company. You are a contractor being hired for a project, and you lead and set those boundaries, and it can make all the difference in your happiness within your business. So that's why I like to beat this drum. But boundaries, it's something we sometimes see as a really intense word. So when I say client boundaries, you might think like, that's a lot. Like, that sounds really intense. That's not what I want. I want my projects to be more fun or whatever it is. But really all I mean by that is what I just said is that you lead, you tell your clients how to communicate with you versus reacting to how they are naturally communicating you without being given directions. That's really the simplest way to put it is like, and I say communication because that's the biggest place this plays out, but it plays out in other ways as well. But it's basically you telling people how it is to work with you versus reacting. And let me tell you too, clients appreciate this. I know for me, even like recently working with different contractors, I appreciate being told like, here's how to communicate because I want to do it right. I want to be a good client for them. So being told like, here's what to expect, here's how to message me, all of that, super, super helpful. So even if you don't directly tell your clients, here's how communication works with us, here's how to communicate with me, you are also indirectly telling them by just how you do the communication. So an example of this, say one day you haven't told your clients any directions, right, for how to communicate with you or how projects work, but then one day randomly you text your client to get them to send you a password. And now you've opened up that line of communication and you haven't told them, right, that texting is only going to be for when I need your password. It's just, you text them now. And then before you know it, you could be on the receiving end of getting their website images in a text message. True story. That's not made up. That happened to me because I wasn't leading and telling my client, here's how to communicate and here's the boundaries. So here are the things to figure out. I'm just going to list them out for you. There are more than this technically, but these are some that like I would say might naturally come up in a way that would lead you to being drained if any of these happen and you are not wanting them to happen. So will you text with your clients? Do they have Voxer access to you, Slack access, like all these different kinds of like apps that people can find you on? Or can they message you on your Facebook page with their questions or on Instagram? Like, what is that situation? Do they email with you or are you only communicating over a project management system? I highly recommend doing a project management system for bigger projects. Can they call you when they have a question or text you when they have a question? Is your calendar always open for them to say like, hey, can we meet tomorrow at 10? What does all that look like? And as I read those questions, you might actually already know your answer to those questions, right? You might be like, yeah, of course I don't want my client to call me whenever they want to. But do your clients know the answers to those questions? That's, again, where like the boundary and where like, you know your answer, but you got to communicate to your client. Some other things to communicate would be your turnaround time, making sure people know both like when to expect next steps in the the project from you, but also second thing, when they should expect to get messages from you about the project. Like what should that response time be? When are your office hours or your available response times? When are payments due? What happens if they paid late? A lot of this stuff is things that needs to be in your contract, but it can also be just naturally communicated in another like non-contractual way as well. So the key here is communication. And I'm sure many of you guys have seen this if you've been around online business for a while, but I feel like it is so trendy in online business, mostly coming from people who are selling courses on how to make courses or selling something about scaling and passive income and things like that. But it's really trendy to talk bad about service businesses, as if everyone who has a service business should be trying to get out of the service business. You should be trying to do courses. You should try to do digital products, get everyone to membership, whatever it is. And I think that is BS. And I don't subscribe to that mindset. It pains me so much of the time when I see people just talking bad about service businesses. So I think service businesses are amazing. And amazing if that stays your business model long term. Again, I think to draw it back up to this tip, a lot of the reason people give when they're going to talk bad about a service business is this stuff, that working with clients is hard. They don't respect your boundaries. They take up too much time and all of those kinds of honestly excuses. And so what I want to tell you is that does not have to be true. And having boundaries, specifically communication boundaries with your clients will really help, as well as some other things we're going to talk about here. Okay, so my third tip, do not box yourself into the 9-to-5 mentality that you have to work within certain hours or that your work should take X amount of time to complete. Now, I think I've talked about this on the podcast recently. You guys might be like, oh yeah, that was last week's episode or the week before. I can't really remember. I feel like I've been talking about this a lot lately though. But the truth of it is that I feel like we cannot be reminded this enough. So often we come from corporate land where things were done between 8 or 9 to 5. And somehow magically everyone's work requires 40 hours a week to do. And I see this all the time that new designers accidentally bring in that mentality or even a worse mentality into their design business. So it's not only them believing that you have to work 9 to 5 and that everything takes 40 hours, but also that you have to work nights and weekends too if you want to get ahead. And so my big thought with this tip here is that I'm all about working smarter and harder early on and all that. And I do believe that in a lot of times it does require hustle to really get your business off the ground. But if you want to avoid burnout, it's helpful to focus on sustainability too. So not being in that hustle mentality of working late, working all the time, not focusing on your own health and things like that all the time. That will help you not get drained by your design business when you are not being in the 9-to-5 mentality. So here are I have 3 practical little tips on this one. I love how in this episode, I'm taking everything practical with some let's get really tangible here. But these were some tips that helped me personally, especially when I was fresh off my 9-to-5. So I've been doing my business about 7 years. Well, I've been out of my 9-to-5 more than 7 years now, but doing my business in an official sense about 7 years. But early on, it really was hard for me to make this mental transition. And maybe I should do an episode on that sometime soon. But even down to you can swing it both ways, right? You can be working too hard after your 9-to-5, or you can be watching Netflix while you work and getting nothing done. I definitely did both. But here are some things that helped me. So first one, if you're going to work at night, that's fine. If that's what I know a lot of designers are night owls. We love to get out our laptops and have, some coffee at night or have some ice cream or whatever and watch some TV while we work. And while you're working on a big website project. I know I personally enjoy that. So I'm not going to say don't do that. Actually, fun fact, before I had Colin and earlier on in my business, really for years, one of my favorite things to do was on a night, my favorite things to do, not in life, but in my business, was on a night where Adam was going to be working late for whatever reason. Back when he was working in ministry on Young Life staff, he often had days where, his work night started at 6:30 p.m. and he might not be home till 10 or 11. And I loved planning okay, it's going to be an Elizabeth work night and I'm going to work on this client website. And I would often put on some movie on the big screen in our bonus room that I'd already seen before. And I would sit on the floor with my laptop and some cardboard and draw out websites and maybe have an ice cream break somewhere in there. And it was fabulous. Seriously, I think back in that time and I'm oh my gosh, that was so much fun. I loved it. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I am saying if you're going to work at night, do it deliberately with a plan versus just kind of being like, I don't really know what to do right now. My laptop's sitting right there on the sofa still. I'm just going to work. Why not? Do it more deliberately than that. And again, that'll help you not be drained by your business. So if you're going into that work at night, kind of like I said, it's more like a once or twice a week thing. That's going to be a lot healthier than if you're just like, you never close your laptop all day long. And before you know it, you've been sitting at your desk or on the sofa or at your kitchen table all day staring at a screen. That's not going to help you be sustainable long term. Another really practical tip. This is something I learned from Nancy Ray on her podcast, the Work and Play podcast. It's a really great one. I can't remember what episode she shared this on. I think she said she learned this from a book, but she talked about how when you're done with work for the day, close your laptop or shut down your computer, whatever it is, close a notebook, close something though, and say all done or work finished, work complete. I literally forget what her exact phrase was, but saying that out loud. And it's funny, after I heard her talk about that, I started doing it every day and I love it. And I particularly think saying it out loud is really helpful for me of like shutting down my office space. So like for me, I work on a laptop still. Yes, I do not have a big screen. I work from a laptop all these years later, but I literally will close my laptop and I will say work finished. And I usually close any notebooks I have on my desk. I wish I could say I cleaned my desk at the end of the workday, but I do not always do that. So it's more so just closing my laptop is my part there. And it really helps me transition into home life from work life, right? Which again, back on not having our design business drain us, we need to not be in the work headspace all the time. So closing the laptop, if it's not a night where you're going to be working after the fact, and really like dividing that up. And then a third practical tip would be to schedule your time and schedule what you're going to work on when, so that way you're not aimlessly working or frantically working. I think both can happen when you don't have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, the franticness can happen because you can feel like you just have so much to do and you're like, how am I going to do it all? But maybe you haven't practically actually looked at what all it is. And then if you don't have as much to do, it can make you just kind of be aimless of like you're doing things that aren't really important just because back on that 9 to 5 mentality, you feel like it's, 10 a.m. on a Monday, so you should be working even if there's not necessarily something to do. So scheduling your time is really helpful. And I have a whole lot of different podcast episodes on that topic. And again, to bring it back to tip number 1, depending on your season of life, scheduling is going to look different. I had a season of my life where I was scheduling things hour by hour on my calendar. I don't do that right now because I have a baby who is still nursing, and that schedule and his nap schedule and things like that, my work life can kind of revolve around that more. It's more unpredictable. Like right now, my mother-in-law, who's absolutely amazing, she's downstairs with Colin because Adam's at work. I'm up here working and recording this podcast episode for you. But like at any minute, he could need me to come downstairs. So it's just a different season. So you have to figure out what does scheduling look like for your season and do a version of that. So that was my tip number 3, though. Don't box yourself into the 9 to 5 mentality. Will help you so much with your mindset and not being drained as a business owner. Okay, and number 4, my fourth and final tip, work with clients who you respect, who respect you and your prices, and who you feel good about serving. And you might be thinking, Elizabeth, that sounds so dreamy, but it's hard to find clients like that. I can help you with that. Book.Designer is all about finding these amazing clients. They are not unicorns. They are all out there and they would love to work with you. I'm sure it's just about finding them and marketing to them and having the systems to bring more of them into your business. But this is so huge in having a design business that doesn't drain you. So in our student Facebook group for Book.Designer, it's like a community where people are posting there very much every day, but different questions. So it's a spot where people who've all taken Book.Designer can come and ask, and we kind of continue supporting each other and talking about things going on in our business. But just a few weeks ago, actually, when I was first outlining this outline I'm talking about, there were 2 that week celebration posts in our group from Book.Designer students who were celebrating either firing a client or saying no to a client that had red flags, which might feel funny. You might be like, oh my gosh, what kind of community is this that they're celebrating firing clients? And that might feel funny to celebrate, but like this is what it looks like to build a business on your terms and building a business that won't drain you. So like they were posting like, hey, I had this client situation. It was really hard. And I finally let that retainer client go, or I finally canceled the project and gave them a partial refund or whatever it was saying in your contract. And I let them go because they were so challenging to work with. And now I'm happier, right? So we've all had clients at some point. If you haven't been in business long, you probably will have this at some point. God bless you if you don't, that'd be amazing. But you'll probably have a client at some point that you will want to fire because they're challenging to work with. Maybe they nickel and dime you. Maybe they don't respect your time. Maybe they don't respect your skill. Maybe they belittle you. Maybe they have a million revisions and they go back in their revisions over and over again. Maybe they're the client that's telling you, hey, I found this design on Pinterest. Can't you do that exact same thing? Like whatever it is. Or maybe it's a potential client and on the discovery call, you can tell that there are red flags there, but you're distracted by dollar signs and you want to say yes anyway. So I would just encourage you to listen to your gut with client projects. Find a community. I'd love to have you in our Book.Designer community where you can literally ask other designers like, hey, this is my client situation. How would you handle it? Because sometimes advice high level, like what I'm giving you right now in this podcast, is not what you need. You need more specific for your specific client situation. But I would just say figure out what clients are draining you in your business and try to attract less of those. And if it makes sense to fire a client or if it makes sense to say no to a project because it's not going to bring you joy and ultimately help you grow your business, and if it's going to drain you, it's okay to say no. So a little personal experience. I have personally had to fire a client 2 times, maybe one more than that, but I think just 2 times in my business as a designer. And then there was one other time where looking back, I'm like, that should have been a situation where we quit working together, but we didn't. And I really, truly believe that when we do this, even when it's hard, even when it's like recurring income or whatever it is, when we make room, another better suited client will come along. And sometimes we just need to clear the way for them. We need to clear off like the mental stress we have from this one client that's being so hard. And then you'll make room for another more amazing client. And again, I've seen this literally happen with Book.Designer students who are like, I let go of this client and now I found this other amazing client that's so much more aligned with me. So we talk about this a lot in Book.Designer in the course as well. I share about there's a whole video on red flags to watch out for on discovery calls, like literally things that a client might do in a discovery call that you should be like, I'm not going to work with you, or at least reconsider it and pay attention to, maybe ask an important follow-up question, all of that. So I have a lot of trainings in there though to make sure you're working mostly with clients. I know you'll have some bad experiences along the way and that's just normal, but mostly with clients who respect you, respect your prices and respect your business. And on the last note of this one, I just want to also add as I'm talking about this, if you right now have a client who's just like a nightmare client and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst that I got myself into this situation. Or maybe you're like, wait, am I the problem? This is so hard. Just really hear me when I say that most designers at some point are going to have a quote unquote nightmare client. And that doesn't mean the client's a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It might just mean that you guys are not well suited to work together. And that's such a learning and growing experience for you and your design business. Again, does not mean you failed. Even if your client's saying mean things to you. I've literally had a client belittle me. My first time that happened where I should have fired a client. I think I've talked about in the podcast before. I talked about extensively in Book.Designer, but I had a client truly bully and belittle me. And it was really hard. And I carried that baggage of what this client said for way too long. And I just want to encourage you though that it's okay if you have a bad client experience. It doesn't mean you're bad. It also doesn't mean they're bad. And there's a lot of different ways to navigate it. And I encourage you to get support and advice, an outside opinion on how to navigate it. But yeah, it's a growing experience. Maybe consider yourself even a little pat on the back once you've had the bad client, knowing that now you can have some learning experience and go apply it to something else. But yeah, so that was my fourth one though, working with clients who respect you and your prices and who you feel good about serving. So making that your aim and being really discerning about projects and what you say yes to. So that is it. Those are my 4 tips. And before I recap them, because I do want to recap them and give a little bit of action steps with them, I want to invite you, designers, check out my guide to mastering discovery calls for designers. It's at elizabethmccravy.com/discovery. And it's a PDF guide, really beautifully designed, really fun to just read over, that's going to help you prepare for discovery calls so you can book better clients and pay attention to this kind of stuff I'm talking about. But really, the guide sets you up well to know how to lead on calls, how to be confident as you sell, and so many other things that's just going to lead you to more bookings and a happier design business. And it's absolutely free. I don't think I already said that, but it's absolutely free. So elizabethmccravy.com/discovery, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Okay. The tips though, what they were: keep your eyes set on your version of success. And remember that question I said to ask yourself, journal it, ask yourself about if it was 6 months from now and you said it was your best year in your life and your business, what would have had to happen for that to be true? 2, set boundaries with your clients. And I gave some examples of different things to like think over and look at and make sure you're communicating it to your client versus it just living in your head. 3, don't box yourself into the 9-to-5 mentality that you have to work within certain hours or that everything should take a certain amount of time to complete in your business. Really try to let go of that. And then 4, work with clients who respect you and your prices and who you feel good about serving. And don't be afraid to fire a client if you need to. That's going to help you have a sustainable business that isn't draining you long term and ultimately will make room for more clients. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll be back next Tuesday with another new episode. And if you want more right now, definitely scroll back through all the past episodes. There's like, what episode number is this? 180. Today's 180 episode, I think. There's so many episodes though that you can scroll back on that are going to help you grow your design business, and so much more. All the marketing, productivity, so many tips. So maybe find some episodes that sound good to you, download them, and tune in. All right, I'll be back next week. Bye, guys. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today and for staying until the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my online course and coaching program for designers, Booked Out Designer. In this program, I teach you how to build a successful, in-demand, booked out business as a designer. You'll learn everything from the exact experience I take my clients through to things like figuring out your niche, mastering discovery calls, pricing your services for profit, creating contracts that will not cause you legal troubles, and my exact social media strategies to book clients. You even get to watch recordings of me in actual meetings with my actual clients so you can really learn through what you're seeing. We take things you're learning on this podcast and so many topics I never even cover on this show and deep dive into them. So in addition to the amazing course, the course is 9 modules of teaching with over 90 lessons. You get group coaching calls with me and access to an exclusive Facebook community of designers just like you. And fun fact, this isn't one of those kind of Facebook groups where the founder never comments on posts or you never see them in there. You'll find me there all the time, ready to help you out with any business question you have. So to get info on the course and to see when the doors will be opening again, head to elizabethmccravy.com/BOD, short for Booked Out Designer. I hope to be able to coach you and teach you inside of the course soon. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And a great way to support the show is to leave a rating and a review, share it with a friend, share it on social media. All of that will help get the word out. All right, I'll see you again next week.